All right, joining me now here on the Full Court Press from the Idaho Press. He's also editor at the Blue Turf Sports. He's a beat writer for the Boise State Broncos. Does an incredible job. If you need a recap or at least a preview on the Boise State Broncos, make sure you snag him on Twitter at BJ Rains. That's who joins me here on the Full Court Press. BJ, thanks for your time, my man.
No problem, man. Appreciate the intro. How's it going?
It's great here. And it's exciting here because once again, what do you know? Boise State, Utah State, another showdown for at least a shot at the Mountain West Conference Championship game. But it's kind of interesting this year for Boise State with all the injuries they've been dealing with. Now they're to a third-string quarterback who, by the way, won Mountain West Conference Player of the Week last week. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, Jalen Henderson, quite a story. Started at college in Texas and then went to a junior college. And basically Boise State was just desperate for a backup, like a second or third stringer. They just needed some depth because they had some guys transfer a couple years ago. And he was looking for a spot, and he came. I don't think anybody actually thought he'd play much or have a role. He was just going to be a guy to help fill, practice and fill a spot. And due to some injuries this year, he's worked his way up the depth chart and got the surprise start last week against, on senior night against New Mexico and played pretty well. Passed for 292 yards and 3 touchdowns. Did have an interception and also got hit and lost the ball in a fumble. So did have 2 turnovers. But overall, the offense didn't really seem to take a step back, and he managed things. And, it was quite the story. If you told Boise State fans, before the season that Jalen Henderson was going to be starting a key November game for you and win Mountain West Player of the Week, I think everybody would have thought you were crazy. But that's what happened so far, and he did pretty good. And we'll see what happens, if he plays again or not this week.
What is the word on that? Have you heard anything if he's going to start or if they've got one of their guys back? What's the word?
Yeah, they're dealing with the same thing that you guys in Logan are dealing with. A lot of secrecy and coaches not wanting to say much and trying to take advantage of the gamesmanship and the advantage that they have. And if you're Boise State, why not? Make Utah State prepare for as many as 3 different quarterbacks. So I would guess that he probably starts again, just based on the last couple of weeks in practice and what we've heard. And guys missing, Hank Bachmeier's missed 3 of the last 4 games. Chase Cord, we don't really even know what's going on with him. He kind of mysteriously just didn't play last week after finishing the last game. So I don't know if that was a 1-week thing or what. So I would guess that Chase Cord would be the one more likely to come back. I think Bachmeier's might be a longer-term injury, but they've been very quiet about that. But with how Henderson played, I don't think they're all that worried if they have to start Henderson again against Utah State.
I got to ask you, how much did it benefit, and with all due respect to New Mexico, but it's a dumpster fire over there, how much did it help that your third-string quarterback got a chance to start against New Mexico?
Oh, that was a big deal. That was certainly a big factor. Let him get a game under his belt, let him run the offense, let the coaching staff see what he does well in game situations. They can kind of tailor the game plan towards him for this week. And in terms of nerves and comfort level and things like that, having a game under his belt, I think, is going to be huge for him. And Boise State the last 3 weeks has started 3 different quarterbacks, and they've all won games. And so I know BYU, I guess, did it also, oddly enough, the last 3 games, but I can't imagine there's too many other schools in the country that have started 3 different quarterbacks in 3 straight games, and they've all won. And so they just find a way to plug him in and keep it moving. And I'm sure the confidence helped him a ton going into this game because obviously, as you mentioned, there's a lot on the line and a lot of high stakes for this one. And I think that, having that game under his belt is probably going to help him relax a little bit.
Boise State has been here, done that numerous years. This is a routine, almost a traditional thing for them, led by Brian Harsin. What is it about Boise State that they continue to be in this position year after year after year?
Well, I think it starts with recruiting. They obviously recruit very good players, and they have a very good home field advantage. They don't lose very much at home. They went undefeated at home in the regular season for, I think, the 4th time in the 6 years under Harsin. So they don't lose at home pretty much, and then they are able to take advantage of things on the road. And their schedule this year, I think everybody knew it last year. Last year, Utah State, had a little bit of an easier in-conference schedule. They had, Boise State had to play Fresno and San Diego State last year. Utah State did not. And I think people are looking at this year how the schedule is going to flip, and it certainly helped Boise State that they played. They're playing UNLV and San Jose and Hawaii this year, as opposed to having to play, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Nevada. So the flip schedule helped this year, and the other side was not very strong. But overall, they just have a culture, and they have a very strong facilities. It's easy to recruit to. They have a national brand in terms of the blue turf and what they've done and winning the Fiesta Bowls and things, so they can get in some doors or some recruits that maybe some other schools in the Mountain West can't. And they have an advantage. They have a big advantage over the other schools in the Mountain West when it just comes to what they can offer in terms of national TV exposure and facilities and games like that. And so I think it's just a lot of things that come together, and it's just a tradition that they have kept going, and it's worked out pretty well for them the last several years.
Coach Anderson in his Monday presser was extremely high praise on the front defensive line for Boise State. What can you tell us about these guys?
Well, they're dealing with an injury to Curtis Weaver. It's unsure if he's going to play on Saturday. He left the last game against Wyoming. He's number 2 in the nation in sacks right now with 12.5. He's likely going to be a first-round NFL draft pick if he comes out this year. So Curtis Weaver, number 99, is one of the best defensive players in college football, and he's kind of a hybrid outside linebacker defensive end. They call it their stud position, but he's basically a pass rusher. And so, that it kind of starts there, and his status for Saturday is unknown and up in the air. He was seen after the game or in the second half wearing a boot on his foot, so there's some speculation it's an ankle sprain or a high ankle sprain, but nothing really to report there. And again, Boise State is keeping that under wraps, and so we'll see if Weaver is able to play on Saturday. But if he's not, that's a huge loss. But they've got 3 other senior starters along the defensive line: Chase Atata at defensive end, and then 2 interior guys, David Moa and Sanatane Louie. The first play of the game against New Mexico, Chase Atata knocked the ball out, and 300-pound Sanatane Louie picked it up and rumbled 24 yards into the end zone for a touchdown 9 seconds into the game. And so the defensive line is very veteran. Like I said, a lot of seniors, a lot of guys that have been to wars and played in a lot of tough, hostile environments and crowds and just know what they're doing. And, they've got a 6th-year guy in David that's been around for a long time. And, Sanatane Louie went on an LDS mission. So those guys are like 24 and 25 years old, the 2 oldest players on the team. So they just have a pretty good. They've always kind of had a good defensive line, and they like to rotate guys in. But they've really relied on the first starting 4 this year a lot, and those guys have played really well, and they've needed them to.
What stands out to you about Henderson? Coach talked about his mobility and his ability to be able to throw on the run. What else stands out to you about Henderson and what he can do at the quarterback position if he does play Saturday night?
Yeah, he's definitely a mobile quarterback, definitely a guy that doesn't just stand back there in the pocket. He's not afraid to step up and take off and run and do things with his legs. The very first play of the game, they kind of script the plays ahead of time. Well, New Mexico punted the ball down to like the 3-yard line, but they had their first play of the game, which was supposed to be a play action, and he was supposed to roll out to the right. Well, they ran the play anyway, but here he is on his first play rolling out like into the back of the end zone. But he was able to complete a pass for, I think, 14 yards. And, he did a good job of, he's a smart kid. He gets the ball to the playmakers. Khalil Shakir and John Hightower, 2 of the better playmakers in the Mountain West. He got the ball to them a lot and let them do their thing. A lot of short passes that turned into big gains and things like that. So, get the ball to number 2 and number 16 is probably not a bad idea, and he did that. And, again, got to cut down on the turnovers, had the interception, had the fumble that he lost. But overall, he knows the offense. He's been in the system for 2 years, and he just seemed like a veteran guy that wasn't spooked by anything out there. And I think that the atmosphere and the stakes and all that on Saturday, I don't think will phase on what we've seen from him so far.
Again, BJ Raines of the Idaho Press, and he's also editor for Blue Turf Sports, joins us here on the Full Court Press. BJ, when I look at the Mountain West, it's about as tough as I remember. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, with maybe 8 teams that will become bowl eligible by the end of the season, with 7 bowl tie-ins. What have you seen out of the Mountain West this year compared to other years that you've been able to study them?
Yeah, it's maybe not as top-heavy or as star-heavy as like the American this year with Cincinnati and Memphis and SMU and Navy and like teams that are actually in the top 25. But in terms of like quality teams that can beat you on any given day, there's not a lot of easy off nights in the Mountain West. A team like Hawaii this year all of a sudden is going to be in the championship game with a win on Saturday, and that used to be a fairly easy game when you played Hawaii. And San Jose State is no longer a gimme game. They played Boise State pretty tough and were winning going into the fourth quarter against Boise State. So even some of the bottom teams are coming up to the pack. And as you guys know, there's just not a lot of easy road venues. They're tough trips for teams to get to. It's tough venues to play at. It's altitude. It's just there's not a lot of places where you can go. So a road game in the Mountain West is always tough, no matter who you are. And then the quality of coaches in this league. There's pretty good coaches in this league too. When you look at Tedford and Rocky Long and some of the other guys, Craig Bull and Troy Calhoun. I mean, there's a lot of good coaches in this league, and so I think that plays a part of it too. And so I just think it's maybe doesn't get the national recognition that it should. You look at all the non-conference games they won. You have UNLV beating a Vanderbilt, Wyoming beating a Missouri. I mean, you go down the line. They had a lot of the Mountain West did very well in the non-conference, and it doesn't seem like that's translating over to getting much love from the committee and people talking about it. Everyone just wants to have a love fest with the American, and that's fine. But overall, those that are in the Mountain West know how hard it is. Those that follow the Mountain West know how hard it is. And it's certainly no easy nights in the league, and I think there's a lot of quality teams. And be very curious to see what happens if you do get 8 bowl eligible teams. Because last year you had Wyoming go 6-6 and not get picked for a bowl. You would assume they're going to get a bowl this year. They wouldn't leave them out twice, and so you wonder if they can find enough spots for all the other teams.
If Utah State beats Boise State, there's this whole tiebreaker thing that comes into place at the end of the season, assuming that Air Force beats Wyoming at home. Can you, for our listeners, because I can't do it even as hard as I try, explain how this tiebreaker would work? It doesn't favor Utah State in any way, but how does it work with Air Force, Boise State, and Utah State, assuming Utah State and Air Force take care of business?
Yeah, I'll make it simple by skipping. You can just skip the first 4 steps. There's going to be about 4 steps in the tiebreaker. Games against common conference opponents, and games again. There's just all these but they're all tied. If they all finish at 7-1 and the one win, and that means Utah State wins on Saturday, and they're all 7-1, and Air Force takes care of business the last 2 games. You can skip all the other tiebreakers, and it would eventually go down to the CFP rankings or computer rankings. None of the 3 teams would probably be ranked in the CFP. I guess there's an outside shot that a 10-2 Air Force could sneak in, but I wouldn't expect that. So you're going to go down to the computer rankings at that point to determine the top 2 teams. So basically they're going to rank the teams in the computer rankings. There's like 4 or 5 computers that get averaged together. I would not think Utah State would fare very well in that just because they have 4 losses at this point. Mm-hmm. And again, I know some of them were to some very tough teams, but it doesn't look like the computers love Utah State. So if things play out like that, you would assume that Utah State would be the 3rd place team there and drop out. And then once you get to 2 teams, you would go to head-to-head, and it would be Boise State and Air Force, and Boise State beat Air Force. So Boise State would still be in a position to win and host the championship game. But you never know with the computers. You never know how it's going to play out. But it would go down to CFP rankings. If no team's in the top 25, then it would go down to computer rankings, and they take the 3-team tiebreaker and get it to 2. So the 3rd place team in the tiebreaker would be eliminated, the lowest computer ranking team, and then look at the top 2, and they would go head-to-head, and whoever won that would be the division champ.
As you already mentioned, Hawaii could end up being in the conference championship game if they take care of business versus San Diego State late Saturday night. Is there anything you want to see changed in regards of the way the conference championship is played when you look at the Mountain Division and how loaded it is, and on the other side it's a 3-loss team most likely is going to make it in? Is there anything you want to see changed, or do you like the way it is right now?
Well, they had that a couple of years ago. They've had that a couple of times where Boise State was, in the top 20 and lost a tiebreaker to Wyoming, I think, for the championship game. In a weird way, and Boise State was clearly better than a team on the other side. So you're seeing some of the teams. I think the American Conference is getting rid of divisions starting next year or the year after, and so you're getting some of these teams that are getting rid of divisions and just taking the top 2 teams from the conference, and that's certainly an option you could look at. Get away with divisions, just figure out a scheduling rotation that would be similar to what it is now, but you just don't actually rank the teams in a division. You just rank them 1 through 12. And then the top 2 at the end of the year would play, and then the higher seeded team would host. I mean, it's fairly simple. So you could do it that way, but in terms of playing for something and the division title and all that, and just the way it works scheduling wise, the Mountain West hasn't wanted to do that. But it seems pretty simple. If the goal is to have the best 2 teams in there, that would certainly be a way to do it. And so I know there's television and money and all kinds of stuff that comes into play with the scheduling that makes that more difficult that we don't have time to get into. But, I'm okay with it like it is now. I mean, I don't have a huge issue with it. You have the 5 teams on your side. It's kind of like in baseball when you do divisions. A lot of, you have some divisions in baseball or hockey or basketball where it's just not fair. There's 3 really good teams that year, but only one can win the division. And so it's just how it works in sports. It goes back and forth. San Diego State and Fresno both had really good teams, in the last couple of years, and only one of them could win and make it to the championship game. So the way you could do it is get rid of divisions and just have the top 2 teams play, but it doesn't sound like the Mountain West is crazy about going to that anytime soon.
Give me a key that Boise State needs to do to win on Saturday night at Maverick Stadium in Logan.
They got to get some turnovers. I mean, Boise State's defense just hasn't found a way to get as many turnovers this year. They've only got 5 interceptions on the season, which ranks like 101st in the country. They have a negative turnover margin going into this game, and Utah State has a negative turnover margin too. I think -1 for Utah State, I think -3 for Boise State. So both these teams are prone to giving up the football, and I think 15 interceptions or something like that for Jordan Love. So, certainly this is an opportunity where Boise State has a chance to get some turnovers, and they've got to do it because, defensively, they've just got to find a way to slow down Utah State's offense and find a way to, win the field position battle. In games that Boise State has really struggled this year, they've lost the field position battle with turnovers, with, stalled drives or bad punt returns that lead to, the other team starting at midfield. So when teams have to drive, 70, 80, 90 yards on Boise State's defense, they don't usually, score very often. It's the short fields at BYU, their only loss. 2 of the touchdowns came when there were interceptions that led to BYU starting at inside the 40-yard line. So, the same thing in the Wyoming game a couple weeks ago that went to overtime. They all 3 of their Wyoming scoring drives were less than 50 yards. So they've got to find a way to, win the field position battle, create some takeaways for their offense, and then they can't turn the ball over themselves. They've got to, be smart with the ball offensively and limit the turnovers. And, that game in 2015 down in Logan where Boise State had a record 8 turnovers, I think 7 in the first half or something crazy like that. They just had too many turnovers and things snowballed on them in Logan, and that obviously is something that can't happen again on Saturday. BJ
Rains of the Idaho Press, and he's also editor of Blue Turf Sports. He's also an AP Top 25 Hoops voter, which brings a lot of intrigue to Utah State Aggie fans. Can we talk some hoops for just a moment?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm actually higher on the Aggies than some of the other AP voters. I have them ranked, I want to say 14th or 13th this week.
Oh, you're making a lot of friends here in Cache Valley. Hey, first thing first, Leon Rice was not happy about Boise State's loss, 69-60 to UC Irvine. They now get BYU tonight. What do you see out of this Boise State basketball team that needs to be improved as they face a very good Cougar squad?
Yeah, they've had a brutal schedule to start with. Last year they went 1-9 in games decided by 3 points or less. They had 10 times they led at halftime and then blew the lead. They just lost a lot of close games last year, and what they probably should have done was play some easier games to start with, get some wins, get some confidence. But Leon kind of loaded up the schedule. They played at Oregon, who was ranked 14th. That didn't go very well. They played a UC Irvine team last week who went to the second round of the NCAA tournament and was like 31-6 last year. They really struggled in that game, and now they have to play a third straight game against a potential NCAA tournament team in BYU. And so, this is a game they really, really, really need to win tonight just to avoid falling to 1-3 and just to get a decent win. But I think they're better than the record. They've just played some really tough teams to start with. The issue is just, they have a couple guys injured. They were expecting to have a guy, Emmanuel Acott, a transfer from Arizona that did not get eligible, and it's funny because another Arizona transfer went to BYU and did get eligible, and now they're playing him, and he gets to play tonight. But Emmanuel Acott for Boise State had his waiver denied and has to sit out for the year, and he's a top 25 recruit a couple years ago, and they were expecting him to have a big role, so that's hurt. But they have a potential, first or second round draft pick in Derek Alston. They've got some talent on the roster. They've just got to find a way to start translating that into wins.
As you said, you're pretty high on the Aggies right now, more so than a few other AP voters out there. Aggies 5-0 right now. They go into the meat portion of their schedule with LSU, North Texas, and St. Mary's next Friday. What have you seen so far from them that's impressed you the most?
There's just a lot to like. You saw what they did last year and how would they follow that up, and it's been pretty impressive so far. I'm a huge fan of Sam Merrill, and I had him, I want to say, last year, third-team All-American or something. I think I gave him some love at the end of last year as well. I just think that, when is Keita coming back? Has that been announced or decided?
Coach is keeping that under wraps. He's playing it close to the vest.
Okay. Yeah, because we talked to him at Mountain West Media Days down in Las Vegas, and he indicated that it could be a little while, and so that's the one thing is they need to obviously get him back. But if they're able to win games and do what they're doing without him so far, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's a guy that could be a draft pick at some point here that they've got to get back and healthy. So that'll if it comes out that he's out for an extended period of time, it'll obviously change my feelings and others a little bit on them. But just the ball movement and what they're getting from some of the secondary guys. I can't remember his name, but I just saw a stat. The one guy's averaging a double-double.
Justin Bean.
I mean, guys like that, just averaging double-doubles and stepping up and doing what they're doing. It's just they're getting a lot of contributions from up and down the roster. And, Boise State, frankly, should have beat them last year in Boise. Mm-hmm. They had a 3-point play on a questionable foul call, I guess we'll say, and then the game went to overtime. And that's really stung for Boise State because then they did not go to Logan last year. So I know they're looking for a chance to play them again this year. And I know that both the games have been circled on the schedule as key games. But I think Utah State is clearly the top team in the Mountain West and one of the top teams, in the West Coast and in the country. And I think it's going to be very interesting to kind of watch how their season unfolds.
What do you see now of the Mountain West Conference in regards to men's basketball? Who stands out to you besides Utah State?
Well, I mean, I think that there's certainly some teams that have done some things. I know New Mexico lost last night at UTEP. That was not a great game for them to lose. But, there's Fresno State is trying to do some things, and San Diego State went to BYU and got a win. And so, they're doing some things. I just think the bottom of the league needs to get better. I mean, we saw what San Jose State did, getting a big win to start the season. But get teams like them and UNLV and some of the bottom feeders the last couple of years, really, Colorado States of the world, need to raise their level a little bit to help the RPI and the Ken Pom rankings and all that for some of these top teams. Utah State's, I don't know, do they only play San Jose once this year? Probably.
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the league tries to do that to help the top teams out, but some of these bottom feeders just have to improve and have to get better to help the overall quality of the league.
That's BJ Rains of the Idaho Press. He's also editor for Blue Turf Sports. BJ, great stuff from you. Cannot tell you thank you enough. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see you on Saturday night.
Looking forward to making the drive and looking forward to it. Hopefully it should be a good game, and appreciate you guys having me on. Happy to do it anytime.
Absolutely.